I don't know when exactly everything started to fall apart. It wasn't a big event, not at first. Just an evening, an odd phone call, and the unsettling quiet that lingered long after. It's hard to trace the exact moment, but I can tell you this. Everything changed after that night, and I had no idea how to fix it. It started with the text. I remember it clearly, because it was so simple. It was from my wife, Eleanor, and it came in at 11:23 p.m. I was in bed, half watching a documentary I didn't care about, scrolling mindlessly through my phone. The message was brief, too brief, in hindsight. I'm staying at the office tonight. Got a last-minute report to finish. See you in the morning. It wasn't unusual for Eleanor to stay late at work. She was a senior analyst at a consulting firm, and during peak times, she worked long hours. She'd done it before. I didn't question her much. That would be weird, right? A grown man questioning his wife about her late hours at work, especially when I knew the pressure she was under. But there was something about that message that felt off. Maybe it was the tone. It wasn't like her to be so detached. Usually, she'd drop a quick note about how her day went or mention something funny about a coworker. There was none of that this time. Just the cold efficiency of work. The evening drifted on, and I tried to ignore the feeling creeping up my spine. My mind wouldn't let it go. The feeling turned into a knot in my stomach. But I told myself, she's working late. That's all. I went to bed eventually, hoping sleep would drown out the odd sensation that something wasn't quite right. But it didn't. I woke up in the middle of the night, 1:42 a.m., to be exact, because something was gnawing at me. I reached for my phone, the glow of the screen illuminating the dark room. Another message from Eleanor. It came in just a few minutes ago. Staying here a bit longer. I'm sorry. I'll see you tomorrow. Again, the same cold tone. My gut churned, but I tried to push it aside. There was no reason for alarm. It was late, I was tired, and I was just letting my mind run wild. But that night, sleep didn't come easy. I kept tossing and turning, staring at the ceiling, listening to the house creak. I got up a couple of times, went to the kitchen, stared at the empty coffee cup on the counter. When you're married to someone for as long as I've been married to Eleanor, you pick up on the little things. The absence of things you usually don't think about. The next morning, I woke up to an empty house. Eleanor's car wasn't in the driveway. I wasn't surprised. I assumed she had gone to work early. I made coffee, went about my routine, and still couldn't shake the odd feeling. I tried to tell myself I was overreacting. I even laughed it off. She was probably just busy, overworked, like always. By the time noon rolled around, there was still no sign of Eleanor. No text, no call. It was unusual, but not unheard of. Still, my mind kept wandering back to the night before. The messages, the lack of emotion, the sudden work report excuse. At 2 p.m., I tried calling her. No answer, just voicemail. Now I was getting worried. We'd been married for years, and we had a routine. She always checked in. Always. Even when she was busy at work, she'd send a quick message or call just to say, "Hey, everything's fine." I tried again an hour later. No response. That's when I started thinking the worst. I told myself it was crazy. Maybe she was caught in back-to-back meetings. Maybe her phone had died. Maybe she just didn't feel like checking in. But the more I tried to rationalize it, the more the silence felt like something bigger. Eleanor wasn't just busy. She was avoiding me. And that thought, just the idea of it, pulled me into a spiral I couldn't escape. Around 5 p.m., when I was starting to really lose my grip, I decided to do something I hadn't done in years. I went to her office. It was a gut reaction, a desperate one, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. I pulled into the parking garage at her building, hoping I'd find her at her desk, explaining everything away with a tired laugh. But when I got to her floor, the lights were dim, and the office was empty. The door to her office was closed, just like it had been the night before. I knocked softly, then tried the handle. It was locked. At that point, I was in full panic mode. I started calling her phone again, each ring feeling like a dagger in my chest. But still, no answer. I texted her, "Eleanor, where are you? I'm at the office. It's not like you to disappear like this. Please just pick up." Nothing. I stayed there for an hour, pacing, feeling like I was losing my mind. I told myself that I was being unreasonable, that she'd explain everything when she got home. But deep down, I knew this wasn't right. I knew I was missing something. When I finally gave up and left the building, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Eleanor. But when I opened it, my heart froze. I need more time, Thomas. I can't come home right now. I don't know when I will. And just like that, I realized everything was about to change. What did she mean by that? Why couldn't she come home? Why did she need more time? And what had happened in those missing hours between the night before and now? That's when I knew. This wasn't just about late hours at work. It was something bigger, something I had no idea was coming. And I was about to find out just how much I didn't know about my wife, about the life we'd built together. And the truth? The truth was far more twisted than I could have ever imagined. That text from Eleanor stayed with me all afternoon. I need more time, Thomas. I can't come home right now. I don't know when I will. I stared at those words on my phone screen, each syllable feeling like a punch in the gut. What was she talking about? More time? More time for what? I sat in the car for a long while, trying to make sense of it. My mind raced through all the possibilities, none of them good. Eleanor and I had been married for almost 8 years. We had our share of disagreements, but nothing that would explain this. She wasn't the type to go silent for hours without an explanation. So why now? I tried to reason with myself. Maybe she was just overwhelmed at work. Maybe she needed space. But something about the way she said it didn't sit right. There was no comfort in her message. No reassurance. No, I love you. No, I'll be home soon. Just cold, sterile words that made my stomach churn. I thought about calling her again, but I knew that would only make things worse. I didn't want to be that desperate guy, the one who couldn't give his wife a little room. But my hands were shaking as I scrolled through her contacts, debating whether or not to reach out to someone who might know where she was. But who would I even ask? Her coworkers? They weren't going to tell me anything. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being kept in the dark on purpose. I had to know what was going on. Around 7 p.m., I decided to head home. The drive was a blur of thoughts and questions I couldn't answer. When I walked through the door, the house felt strangely empty. I had expected to find Eleanor there, maybe in the kitchen, maybe even on the couch, but no. The silence was deafening. I went straight to the bedroom, hoping she'd come back by then, but still, nothing. No change in her side of the bed. The smell of her perfume was gone, replaced by the sterile scent of an empty room. I grabbed my phone again. Another text. This time, from her coworker Mark. It read, "Hey, Eleanor's not at the office anymore. She left a while ago, didn't say where she was going. Let me know if you need anything." I froze. Mark? Why was he texting me? Why didn't Eleanor tell me she was leaving the office? And why hadn't she called me? A sinking feeling settled in my chest as I realized something wasn't adding up. The last time I'd heard from Eleanor, she was supposedly at the office finishing a report. But now, she was nowhere to be found. And Mark seemed unusually detached, like he wasn't concerned at all that his coworker was missing. It hit me suddenly. Mark had always made me uncomfortable. He wasn't the type to hang around in the background. He was always just a little too friendly with Eleanor. I pushed the thought aside, but the more I thought about it now, the more I couldn't ignore the suspicion that had been growing in me for months. Why didn't Eleanor mention anything about leaving with him? Was it possible? No, I couldn't go there. I wasn't that guy, right? But as the hours ticked by, my mind only grew darker. Eleanor's absence was no longer just an inconvenience. It was a sign. I had to find out where she was, what she was doing, and why she was keeping me in the dark. The phone buzzed again. It was a message from Eleanor, but this one was different. It wasn't like her usual, short texts. This one was long and detailed, filled with more words than I'd seen from her in days. But reading it only raised more questions. "I'm sorry, Thomas. I should have told you sooner, but I couldn't. I didn't want you to know, not like this. I'll explain everything when the time is right. But for now, I need some time apart." Time apart. That was the last thing I expected her to say. We hadn't had a serious fight in ages. Sure, there were small arguments here and there, but nothing major. Time apart. What did that even mean? As I stared at the phone, trying to digest her words, a part of me knew what I had to do next. I had to find her. And for the first time in my life, I was terrified of what I might discover. The next step was clear, but I had no idea how far I'd have to go to uncover the truth. The silence in the house was suffocating. Eleanor's last message echoed in my mind. I need some time apart. My hands were trembling as I set my phone down on the kitchen counter. Time apart. What did that even mean? This wasn't some short disagreement we could just walk away from. We had a life built together, a life that suddenly felt like it was slipping through my fingers. I tried to hold it together, but the walls felt like they were closing in. Everything about this felt off, and the more I thought about it, the more I felt like I was missing something. Eleanor wasn't the type to just vanish, especially without giving me any kind of explanation. She always communicated, always made sure I knew what was going on. I had to do something. I couldn't just sit here and wait for her to come back. I needed answers, and I needed them now. But where to start? I thought about calling her family, but she'd made it clear she didn't want to involve anyone else yet. That's what she said in her last text. I'll explain everything when the time is right. But what if the time was already here? What if there was something happening right under my nose that I couldn't see? I walked around the house aimlessly, each room feeling colder than the last. Then something caught my eye. On the coffee table in the living room was Eleanor's purse, lying wide open, a single crumpled note sticking out of it. I didn't know why, but the sight of it made my heart race. I sat down, feeling the cold, unfamiliar weight of the moment. I wasn't sure what I was hoping to find, but the curiosity was unbearable. I pulled the note from her purse carefully, my hands shaking. It wasn't a grocery list or a reminder. What I found was far more unexpected. It was a name I didn't recognize. Adrian. I stared at the word for what felt like forever. Who was Adrian? Was this another work colleague? Eleanor never mentioned anyone named Adrian before, and yet, here it was, written in her handwriting. I felt the room spin. What was this? Some kind of secret? I read the note again. It was a name, followed by a series of numbers that didn't make sense to me. Was this some kind of code? Or a phone number? I couldn't tell. The unease that had been building inside me quickly turned into something else, something darker. I stood up and started pacing. Was Adrian the reason she was so distant lately? The thought didn't sit right with me. She had always been open about her coworkers, about who she was spending time with, but this Adrian. This was something I wasn't prepared for. I couldn't just ignore it. I had to know more. So, I did what any rational person would do in a moment like this. I Googled the name. The search didn't bring up anything useful. There were too many people named Adrian, too many possible leads. I couldn't narrow it down, but the feeling in my gut only deepened. There was something else going on, something I wasn't seeing. Then, another text from Eleanor came through. This one was short, just a few words. I'm sorry. I'll be back soon. I promise. I stared at the screen, unsure of what to do with myself. It wasn't much of an explanation, but it did little to calm the storm of questions brewing in my mind. And then, I saw something that made my heart stop. Just below her message, there was a notification. Adrian called. My breath caught in my throat. Was it a coincidence? Or was this Adrian the same person? I couldn't tell, but my pulse was racing. I needed to know what was going on. What was she hiding? What was Adrian to her? The pieces were starting to fall into place, but they didn't make sense. Not yet. But I was getting closer, and the closer I got, the more terrified I became. What was I about to uncover? My mind raced as I sat there, staring at the notification on my phone. Adrian called. I couldn't ignore it. Who was Adrian? I didn't recognize the name, and yet there it was, lingering like an unwelcome shadow. What had Eleanor not told me? I tried to push the panic back, tried to reason with myself, but I knew deep down something was very wrong. I couldn't just sit around and wait anymore. This wasn't just a missed text or a vague excuse. Eleanor had been distant, yes, but this was something else. I decided to take action. My heart thudded in my chest as I grabbed my phone and dialed the number that had just appeared on the screen. I knew it was risky, but at this point, I didn't care. My hands were clammy, and I could hear my breath hitching as the phone rang. The call went through, and then, silence. I waited, holding my breath, praying someone would pick up. Finally, a voice crackled through the receiver. Hello. It was a man's voice, deep and calm. My heart skipped a beat. I had no idea who this person was, but I had a sick feeling in my stomach that told me I was about to get an answer I wasn't prepared for. Hello? Is this Adrian? I stammered, my voice shaky. There was a pause on the other end. Then, the voice answered, flat and slightly confused. Who is this? I'm Thomas. I'm Eleanor's husband. The words felt strange in my mouth, like I wasn't even sure who I was anymore. Another long pause. Then, Adrian spoke again, his voice colder this time. Oh, you're her husband. There was a shift in his tone, something I couldn't quite place. I couldn't tell if it was suspicion, annoyance, or something else entirely. Yeah, I need to know what's going on, I said, trying to keep my composure, but my voice cracked. Where's Eleanor? What's happening? There was a hesitation before Adrian responded. I think you need to talk to her, not me. His tone was dismissive, like he had no intention of saying more. And yet, in that short exchange, something clicked in my mind. There was an edge to his voice. I couldn't explain it, but I knew this wasn't just a colleague calling to check in. I wasn't about to let him off that easily. Listen, I'm not trying to cause problems. I just want to know where she is, why she's not answering my calls. You know something, don't you? Adrian was silent for a moment. I could hear the faint rustle of what sounded like papers or clothing in the background. Then, he spoke, his voice low and measured. Look, I'm not getting involved in this. Eleanor will be back when she's ready, and I think you should respect her space. His words hit me like a slap. When she's ready. The way he said it. It wasn't just a casual statement. There was something underlying it, something hidden. I could feel it. Before I could say anything else, the call abruptly ended. I sat there, staring at my phone in disbelief. I couldn't process what had just happened. It didn't make sense. Adrian's coldness. The way he brushed me off like I didn't matter. Why was he so dismissive? Why was he so secretive? I had more questions than answers, and each one felt like a brick sinking in my chest. What had Eleanor gotten herself into? What was she keeping from me? I stared at my phone, the silence around me almost suffocating. The only thing I knew for sure was that I wasn't going to stop until I found out everything. I couldn't shake the conversation with Adrian from my mind. His cold dismissal, his reluctance to give me any information, it all felt wrong. But what could I do now? I had no concrete proof, just a name, a strange phone call, and a feeling deep in my gut that told me something was very off. I had no idea what Eleanor was doing, but I knew I couldn't sit around and wait any longer. By evening, I was restless. The house felt like a shell, empty and cold. I decided I had to do something, anything, to find out what was going on. I grabbed my keys and made a snap decision. I wasn't going to just let Eleanor hide away in her space without knowing what she was hiding from me. I drove to the address I had found in the text message, Adrian's name attached to it. It wasn't much to go on, just a vague street address from a previous conversation I had found. The place was in a quiet, residential neighborhood. It didn't look like much from the outside, just a normal townhouse in a row of similar homes. Still, the closer I got, the more my anxiety crept up. I couldn't shake the feeling that this was the wrong place, but I had to know. I parked a few houses down, my heart hammering in my chest. What if Adrian was there? What if Eleanor was there? I hadn't seen her in over a day now, and the longer I went without any answers, the worse the scenarios in my head got. I sat in the car for a long time, wrestling with myself. It felt like an eternity, but I finally gathered enough courage to get out. As I approached the townhouse, I noticed the lights were on. A shadow moved past the window, and my heart leaped in my throat. Was it Eleanor? Had she come here? I tried the doorbell, hesitating before pressing it. The sound echoed through the quiet street. A few seconds later, the door opened. It wasn't Eleanor who answered, though. It was a woman in her early 30s, someone I didn't recognize. Her expression was wary, but not surprised. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice tinged with suspicion. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. I had no plan, no script for what I was about to do. I didn't even know why I was here exactly, just that something told me I needed to be. "Is this where Eleanor is staying?" I finally managed to say, my words coming out a little too quickly. The woman raised an eyebrow, clearly caught off guard by the question. "Eleanor? She's not here." Her words didn't feel right. There was a shift in her demeanor, a slight tightening of her lips. She was hiding something, I could tell. My mind raced, trying to piece it together. "Are you sure?" I pressed, unable to stop myself. "She's been gone for over a day. I've been trying to reach her, but she's not answering. I think she's been here." The woman hesitated again before speaking, her voice lowering a little. "Listen, I don't know what's going on, but Eleanor isn't here right now. And honestly, I don't think you should be asking these questions." Her tone had shifted to something colder, and I could feel the wall going up. Something in her words didn't add up. I stared at her, feeling a surge of frustration. "I just need to talk to her," I said, my voice tight. "I need to know where she is. She's my wife, and I—" "Look," the woman cut me off, glancing over her shoulder as if checking for someone. "I can't help you. You need to go." Her abruptness left me stunned, but before I could respond, she closed the door without another word. I stood there for a moment, dumbfounded. What had just happened? Had I been too forward? Or was there something more going on here than I could see? I had no answers, just a sense of growing dread. The woman had been hiding something, I was sure of it. But what? Why wouldn't she let me in? Why did she seem so defensive? I walked back to my car, my thoughts a tangled mess. There was no way I was leaving it at that. Whoever that woman was, she knew more than she was letting on. And if Eleanor was really staying here, I wasn't leaving until I found out everything. This visit had only raised more questions, but it also brought me closer to the answers I desperately needed. And I had a feeling things were about to get a lot more complicated. I couldn't stop thinking about the woman's words as I sat in my car, staring at the townhouse from a distance. What had just happened? Why had she been so defensive? It didn't add up. If Eleanor wasn't staying here, why had she reacted that way? I glanced at the clock. It was getting late, and I was running out of options. The longer I waited, the more I felt like I was just chasing shadows. But I knew deep down I couldn't let it go. Not now. Not when I was this close. Suddenly, I saw a figure walk past the window of the townhouse. A shadow, quick, darting out of view. I stiffened. My heart pounded in my chest. There was no mistaking it. Someone was in there, and they didn't want me to know. I had to act fast. I stepped out of the car and approached the door again, my mind racing with possibilities. I had no plan, but something told me to just go for it. As my hand reached for the doorbell, the door swung open. This time, it wasn't the same woman who greeted me, but someone much more familiar. Eleanor. I froze. My breath caught in my throat. For a split second, I didn't know what to say. She looked different. Her hair was messy, her face pale, and her eyes were tired, like she hadn't slept in days. Thomas, she said softly, almost in a whisper. Her voice was strained, like she hadn't expected to see me here. I stood there stunned. I couldn't believe it. She was standing in front of me, right here, in this house, when she'd been so distant, so unreachable. The shock hit me harder than I expected. Eleanor, I started, my voice shaky. Where the hell have you been? I've been looking for you. You've been ignoring my calls. What's going on? She stepped back, clearly trying to avoid eye contact. I didn't know how to explain it, Thomas. I didn't know where to start. Her words were cold, but there was something else in her eyes. Guilt? Fear? I couldn't tell. All I knew was that this wasn't the reunion I had imagined. You didn't know how to explain it? Explain what? I asked, my frustration building. You've been gone for over a day. I've been worried, sick, and now I find you here, with no explanation. What's happening, Eleanor? She looked down at the floor, hesitating before speaking. I never meant for it to get this far. But I couldn't just keep lying. My pulse raced. Lying? What are you talking about? You've been gone, you've been avoiding me, and now you're talking about lying? Eleanor finally looked up, her eyes searching mine. I didn't want to hurt you, Thomas. I didn't want you to find out this way. Before I could respond, the door behind her creaked open slightly. Someone stepped out, Adrian. He stood there, looking at me with an almost casual expression. My heart dropped into my stomach. Is everything okay here? Adrian asked, his tone cool, like he was completely unfazed by the tension in the air. I stood there, staring at him, my mind reeling. This was it. This was the moment when everything I had feared, everything I had suspected, started to fall into place. Eleanor turned toward him, her face filled with a mix of shame and something else, something I couldn't quite put my finger on. She looked back at me, her voice barely above a whisper. Thomas, I need to tell you everything. But not here. I looked at her, then at Adrian, the anger rising within me. I felt completely out of control, as if everything around me was spiraling. What was she hiding? What was going on between them? Eleanor, I said, trying to steady my breath. What's happening? Why are you with him? Adrian took a step forward, but Eleanor placed a hand on his chest to stop him. She looked at me, her expression pleading. Please, just let me explain. I promise, it's not what you think. But it was too late. The damage had already been done. The moment I saw Adrian standing there, my world had cracked open. And now, there was no going back. I felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. Standing there, frozen at the threshold of the house, I could barely breathe. Adrian was still standing behind Eleanor, his presence a reminder of everything I had feared. The sudden realization hit me like a freight train. This wasn't just about missing phone calls or strange texts. This was something deeper, something more painful. Eleanor had been hiding something from me. And now, here was Adrian, standing in front of me like it was no big deal. I could feel the anger bubbling up inside me, but I held it in, somehow forcing my voice to stay steady. "What is this?" I asked, trying to keep the tremble out of my words. "What's going on, Eleanor? Why is he here? Why haven't you told me the truth?" She looked at Adrian for a moment, and then back at me, her eyes filled with guilt. For the first time since this nightmare began, I saw a real emotion in her expression: fear, regret, and something I couldn't quite identify. "Thomas, I never meant for things to get this complicated," she said softly, her voice breaking as she spoke. "I've been trying to protect you, but now I see that I can't keep hiding anymore." The words hung in the air like a weight I couldn't escape. "Protect me? From what, Eleanor?" My voice was rising now, the frustration and confusion mixing with the hurt I was starting to feel. "You've been gone for over a day, not answering my calls, and now you're standing here, talking about protecting me? What have you been hiding?" She took a deep breath, her eyes flickering to Adrian again before she spoke. "It's not what you think, Thomas. It's not just about him, about me and him." She paused, like the words were hard to form, as if she was trying to figure out how to say it without completely destroying everything between us. "It's about everything. Everything I've been keeping from you." I shook my head, unable to process the mess she was unraveling in front of me. "What do you mean, everything?" Eleanor finally stepped forward, her eyes filled with tears now. "I've been seeing Adrian for a while, Thomas. I'm sorry. I never wanted it to go this far, but it did. And I didn't know how to stop it. I didn't know how to face you and tell you the truth." Adrian stayed silent behind her, but I could see his eyes flicker with something. Regret? Relief? I couldn't tell, but he didn't seem as torn up about it as I was. I didn't want this, Thomas. I didn't want to hurt you, but I was so lost. I felt like I was living a lie. Everything between us, it wasn't what it used to be." She wiped her eyes quickly, as if ashamed of the tears. "I didn't know how to tell you, and I just kept pushing it further and further." My chest tightened as I listened, but the words wouldn't come. I couldn't speak. I was trapped between anger and betrayal, confusion and heartbreak. She had been lying to me, hiding this whole affair behind my back. And now she was telling me everything, but too late. The damage was done. "You've been seeing him," I said slowly, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. "Behind my back. All this time. And now you think you can just explain it away?" Eleanor's face crumpled, and for the first time, she looked like she didn't know how to fix what she had broken. She took a step back, her hands trembling. "I know I messed up. I don't expect you to forgive me, Thomas. But please, just let me explain." But I couldn't listen anymore. I couldn't take it. Every word she said felt like a slap to the face, a reminder of how blind I had been. The trust one had built with her, the life we'd shared, it was all a lie. And no explanation could fix that. I turned and walked toward the door, not saying a word. But just as I reached for the handle, I heard Eleanor's voice behind me. "Thomas, please. I never wanted to hurt you. Please, don't leave like this." Her voice broke off, but I didn't turn around. I opened the door and stepped into the cool night air, slamming it behind me. And just like that, everything had changed. I walked down the path, the cool night air doing little to calm the storm raging inside me. My mind was spinning, my heart torn in 1,000 different directions. What had just happened? How had everything I thought I knew been shattered in one night? I kept walking, not really paying attention to where I was going, but the distant sound of a car engine caught my attention. I glanced back to see Eleanor standing in the doorway, looking at me with wide eyes, her face streaked with tears. The sight of her, so broken, made something inside me twist, but I forced myself to keep walking. I couldn't go back, not now. Not until I figured out what I was feeling. I didn't know if I could forgive her, if I could ever trust her again, but I couldn't deny that a part of me still loved her. I needed time to process everything that had happened. I found myself at the park a few blocks away, sitting on a bench under the dim light of a street lamp, my hands shaking. The night was quiet, the only sound the rustling of leaves in the breeze. I closed my eyes, trying to breathe through the confusion. It felt like hours had passed before I heard footsteps approaching. I didn't open my eyes, assuming it was just some late-night jogger. But the footsteps stopped in front of me. "Thomas." Her voice was soft, hesitant. I didn't have to look up to know it was Eleanor. I could feel the weight of her presence, the tension between us palpable. But instead of pushing her away, I sat there, letting her take a seat beside me. "I know you're angry," she started, her voice shaky. "I don't blame you. I hurt you in ways I never imagined I would. I'm so sorry, Thomas. I didn't know how to handle it. I didn't know how to talk to you when everything started falling apart. But I never stopped loving you." I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. I had been angry, yes. I still was. But somewhere beneath it all, I could feel a sliver of hope. A hope that maybe, just maybe, we could fix this, if we both were willing to try. "I don't know if I can forgive you, Eleanor," I said, my voice tight. "I don't know if we can ever go back to the way things were. But I also know that we can't just throw everything away. I need time. We both need time to figure out what we want." She nodded, tears still in her eyes. "I'll do whatever it takes to make things right, Thomas. I know I don't deserve it, but I'll be here. I'm not going anywhere." We sat there in silence for a while, just breathing, each of us processing the gravity of the moment. It wasn't a happy ending, but it was a beginning. A beginning of something new. Something that would require effort, understanding, and patience. But maybe, just maybe, we could rebuild. Together. As the night wore on, I realized that I wasn't walking away from her for good. The road ahead would be hard, and there were no guarantees, but I wasn't ready to give up just yet. Maybe love wasn't about perfect moments. Maybe it was about the messy ones. The ones that pushed you to the brink, only to show you what was worth fighting for. And for the first time in days, I felt a flicker of hope.